A black boy from a rental apartment claiming his daddy's a 4-star general. That's the most ridiculous lie I've heard in 23 years of teaching, Mrs. Patricia. Whitmore doesn't whisper it. She announces it to the entire 4th grade class at Jefferson Elementary. Then she snatches Lucas Hughes's carefully written assignment off his desk and rips it in half. The tearing sound echoes. She rips it again and again. The pieces fall like snow onto Lucas's worn sneakers. You don't get to make up fairy tales about being special. Lucas, generals live in big houses. Their children go to private schools. They drive expensive cars. Her voice gets colder. They certainly don't show up looking like, well, like you. 10-year-old Lucas stands there frozen. His hands shake. Every kid in the room stares at him. She crumples the torn pieces and drops them in the trash. Pathetic. Have you ever watched a teacher destroy a child for being black and telling the truth? 2 hours earlier, Lucas Hughes woke up to his father's voice calling from downstairs. Breakfast in 5, soldier. The Hughes family lived in a modest 3-bedroom apartment in Arlington, Virginia, close enough to Fort Myer that you could hear the morning bugle if the windows were open. The furniture was clean but worn. The walls held family photos, but nothing that screamed military family. No uniforms on display, no medals in frames, no flags or plaques. Security protocol. General Vincent Hughes didn't advertise what he did. In the kitchen, Lucas found his dad sitting at the table in jeans and a Georgetown sweatshirt. To anyone passing by, he looked like a regular father. Maybe a teacher, maybe an office worker. His mother, Dr. Angela Hughes, poured coffee in her scrubs. She had an early surgery at Walter Reed. On the refrigerator, a child's crayon drawing showed a stick figure in uniform with 4 stars on each shoulder. Next to it, a calendar with today's date circled in red marker. Parent Career Day, Friday. Lucas couldn't stop smiling. He'd been waiting for this day for weeks. Dad, can I tell them about the time you met the president? General Hughes glanced at his wife. Angela gave him that look. The one that said their son deserved better than secrets. Lucas, remember what we talked about. Some things stay private for security, but everyone else gets to brag about their parents. I know, son. Vincent's face softened. You can tell them I'm a soldier who helps keep people safe. That's the truth, and it's enough. Lucas nodded, but his smile faded a little. It didn't feel like enough. Not when Tommy Braxton's dad was a firefighter with cool stories, and Emma. Sullivan's mom was a TV news reporter everyone recognized. Lucas gathered his backpack, including the assignment he'd stayed up late perfecting. My father, the general, he'd followed the rubric exactly, described the parent's job, its importance, and a personal character trait. Lucas wrote about discipline and integrity. The bell rang at Jefferson Elementary, a red brick building in a neighborhood of old trees and tidy yards. Lucas's apartment complex was just 8 blocks away, but it might as well have been in another world. He walked in, clutching his assignment. The classroom walls were covered in bright posters about multiplication and the water cycle. Mrs. Whitmore stood by the board, her sharp eyes scanning the room as children filed in. She was a veteran teacher, stern and proud of it. Her rules were absolute. The morning began with presentations. One by one, children stood and shared. Tommy Braxton showed a picture of his dad on a fire truck. Emma Sullivan played a clip of her mom on the news. Mrs. Whitmore smiled, asked polite questions, and pinned their papers on the bulletin, a board under a banner that read, "Our Community Helpers." When Lucas's name was called, he walked to the front, his paper trembling in his hands. He took a deep breath. "My father is General Vincent Hughes," he began, his voice clear. "He is a 4-star general in the United States Army. His job is very important because he helps plan missions to protect our country. He works at the Pentagon." A snicker came from somewhere in the room. Mrs. Whitmore's smile vanished. She held up a hand. "Excuse me, Lucas, did you say general? 4-star general?" "Yes, ma'am," Lucas said, standing a little taller. She walked slowly to his desk, her heels clicking on the linoleum. She picked up his assignment, her eyes scanning it. Then she looked at him. Then at the paper, and a slow, contemptuous smile spread across her face. "This," she said, holding the paper aloft, "is what happens when we let our imaginations run wild instead of sticking to the facts." And that's when she tore it. After the pieces fluttered down and the word pathetic hung in the air, Lucas didn't move. He couldn't. The humiliation was a physical weight crushing his lungs. He heard muffled giggles, saw Tommy Braxton smirk. Mrs. Whitmore turned her back. "Open your math books to page 142, she said, as if nothing had happened. Lucas walked back to his seat on legs that felt like rubber. He stared at his desk, burning the pattern of the wood grain into his memory to keep from crying. The morning dragged on, a blur of numbers and words. When the lunch bell finally rang, Lucas was the last to leave. He saw his paper, a white crumpled ball in the trash can by Mrs. Whitmore's desk. He wanted to retrieve it, to somehow fix it, but he couldn't make his hand reach in. In the cafeteria, he sat alone at the end of a table. The whispers were like bees around him. Liar, why would he make that up? Maybe he's crazy. He pushed his food around his tray. His father's words echoed, "The truth is enough." But today, the truth hadn't been enough. The truth had been torn up and thrown away. The afternoon was a haze of shame. During recess, he stayed by the wall, kicking pebbles. He thought about his dad, about the quiet pride in his eyes when Lucas had shown him the finished report. He thought about the secret handshake they had, the way his father would say, "Carry on, soldier," after tucking him in. All of it felt like a dream now, a fantasy Mrs. Whitmore had exposed. When the final bell rang, Lucas shot out of the classroom, weaving through the corridors, desperate for the exit. He burst through the front doors into the cool afternoon air, his chest heaving. He usually walked home, but today he couldn't face the 8 blocks alone. He slumped on the bus stop bench, head in his hands. He didn't know how long he sat there before a familiar black sedan, sleek and government-issued, pulled up silently to the curb. The passenger window slid down. "Need a ride, soldier?" His father was wearing his uniform, not the casual pants and sweater from the morning, but the full Army service uniform, the dark green jacket sharp with creases, 4 silver stars gleaming on each shoulder. His posture was straight, his face calm but serious. Lucas stared, his mouth slightly open. He had never seen his father pick him up in uniform. Never. "Dad?" Vincent Hughes gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Get in." Lucas scrambled into the car, the leather seat cool beneath him. The car smelled of his father's aftershave and polish. They drove in silence for a moment, the only sound the purr of the engine. "I called your mother," his father finally said, his voice low and steady. "She told me about the phone call from your school." "My report," Lucas whispered, staring out the window. "She ripped it up. She said I was lying. She said he couldn't finish." "She was wrong," his father said, and the certainty in his voice was like a solid wall. "She was wrong about you, and she was wrong about me. We're going to go back and show her." Lucas's heart hammered against his ribs. "Back now?" "Right now," his father confirmed, turning the car around. "The truth is enough, Lucas. But sometimes the truth needs to be seen." The sedan glided back toward Jefferson Elementary, not to the student pickup line, but to the visitor parking near the main office. General Hughes turned off the engine. He adjusted his hat, the one with the gold braid and the emblem, and looked at his son. "You walk with me. You hold your head up. You understand?" Lucas nodded, a strange new feeling pushing aside the humiliation. It wasn't quite pride yet, but it was defiance. They walked through the empty hallway, their footsteps echoing. The school secretary, Mrs. Gable, looked up from her desk, her eyes widening at the sight of the uniform. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. General Hughes didn't break stride. "Where is Mrs. Whitmore's classroom?" he asked, his tone polite but leaving no room for discussion. "Room 214, Mrs. Gable squeaked. They're still cleaning up." "Thank you," the general said. They continued down the hall. Lucas could see the light spilling from the open door of his classroom. Mrs. Whitmore was at her desk, stacking books, her back to the door. She heard the footsteps and turned, an impatient remark on her lips. It died when she saw the man filling her doorway. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice unsure, her eyes taking in the uniform, the stars, the immaculate bearing. General Vincent Hughes stepped into the room, Lucas beside him. He removed his hat, tucking it under his arm. "Mrs. Whitmore, I presume." "I'm General Vincent Hughes. This is my son." Lucas, I believe there was a misunderstanding today regarding his assignment. Mrs. Whitmore's face went pale, then flushed. She stood up, knocking a stack of papers to the floor. She looked from the general's stern face to Lucas's, seeing the resemblance now, the same set of the jaw, the same intense eyes. She stammered. There was no protocol in her 23 years of teaching for this. His report, the general continued, his voice cutting through the air like a blade, the one you deemed a fairy tale. I require an apology. To my son, right now. The room was utterly silent. Lucas watched as his teacher, the woman who had seemed like an unstoppable force, began to unravel. Her hands fluttered. She looked at the trash can, then back at the 4 stars on the shoulders before her. Lucas, she began, her voice thin and brittle, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I'm so very sorry. It wasn't enough. The general's gaze didn't waver. For the public humiliation, for the destruction of his property, for the racial profiling implicit in your assumptions. For all of it, a full, unequivocal apology. Lucas felt his father's hand, firm and warm, on his shoulder. Mrs. Whitmore swallowed, her dignity in ashes at her feet. She looked directly at Lucas. Lucas, I apologize for tearing your paper. I apologize for not believing you. I was wrong to judge you based on anything other than your word. My assumptions were prejudiced and shameful. I'm deeply, deeply sorry. The words hung in the air. Lucas nodded once, a sharp, accepting motion. He didn't smile. He just looked at her, letting her see the hurt, and letting her see that her apology, while necessary, didn't magically erase it. The general gave a curt nod. Your apology is noted. A copy of my verified service record, along with a formal complaint, will be delivered to the principal and the will be delivered to the principal and the school board tomorrow. Come, Lucas! They turned and walked out, leaving Mrs. Whitmore standing alone amidst the scattered papers. In the hallway, his father knelt down, bringing himself to Lucas's eye level. Are you all right? Lucas took a shaky breath. I will be. His father pulled him into a tight hug. You told the truth, he murmured into his son's hair. You stood your ground. That's the most important mission of all. I'm proud of you. As they walked back to the car, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows, Lucas felt lighter. The shame was gone, replaced by a weary understanding. The world could be cruel and unfair, but he had an anchor. He had the truth. And sometimes the truth wore 4 silver stars on each shoulder. That evening, after his mother had come home and heard the whole story, after the hugs and the righteous anger had subsided, Lucas sat at the kitchen table. His father placed a fresh piece of paper and a pen in front of him. Write it again, he said. Every word. And this time I'll frame it. Lucas picked up the pen. He began to write. My father, the general. Lucas sat in the quiet car, the scent of polish and his father's starched uniform filling the space. His small hands, still trembling from the afternoon's humiliation, clutched his worn backpack. The gleaming sedan didn't head home. Instead, it turned with a quiet authority back toward Jefferson Elementary. His father, General Vincent Hughes, drove with a focused calm. We are going to correct a misunderstanding, he stated, his voice leaving no room for question. Lucas's heart thudded against his ribs, a mix of dread and a new defiant hope. The car parked not in the student pickup line, but directly in front of the main office doors. General Hughes stepped out, adjusting his hat, the 4 silver stars catching the afternoon sun with a cold, undeniable light. Walk with me, soldier, he said. Lucas fell into step beside him, matching his father's straight-backed posture as they entered the hushed hallway. The school secretary, Mrs. Gable, looked up from her computer, her eyes widening into saucers as they traveled from the uniform to the stars to Lucas's resolute face. She opened her mouth but found no words. Room 214. Please, the general said, his tone courteous yet forged from steel. The walk to his classroom felt endless and instantaneous. Mrs. Whitmore was at her desk, her back to the door, wiping the board. The sound of deliberate footsteps made her turn. Can I help? She began, then froze. The color drained from her face. She saw the uniform, the insignia, the absolute authority in the man's stance. and the boy beside him, no longer shrinking but standing tall. "Mrs. Whitmore." General Hughes's voice was quiet, yet it filled every corner of the silent room. "I am General Vincent Hughes. This is my son. Lucas, we are here regarding the report you destroyed, and the accusations you made." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The truth of his presence was a seismic fact. Mrs. Whitmore's hand flew to her throat. There was a misunderstanding. There was a public humiliation, a destruction of property, and a profound failure of judgment based on prejudice. The general corrected, each word precise and sharp. "You will apologize fully now." Lucas watched, his breath held. The woman who had seemed like an unassailable monument of power now looked brittle, ready to crumble. She looked at Lucas, truly looked at him, perhaps for the first time. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice cracking. I am so sorry. I was wrong, terribly, unforgivably wrong. Your assignment was truthful. My assumptions they were disgraceful. Can you ever forgive me?" Lucas held her gaze. He saw the fear, the shame, the crumbling of her entire worldview in her eyes. He nodded once, a slow, accepting motion. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an acknowledgement of the truth finally spoken. "Your apology is received," General Hughes said. "A formal report of this incident will follow. Come, Lucas." He placed his hand on his son's shoulder and they turned. They walked out of the room, down the hall, past the stunned secretary, and into the liberating afternoon light. In the car, his father let out a long, slow breath. "The truth is enough, son. But sometimes you have to stand right next to it so people can see it clearly." That night, Lucas rewrote his assignment. His father framed it and hung it in their living room, right beside his crayon drawing. It was a reminder that integrity is its own armor and that no one gets to define your story but you. Friends, if this story of truth and integrity resonated with you, please show your support for our channel. At Kindness True Stories, we are dedicated to sharing powerful narratives that highlight dignity, courage, and the power of standing up for what's right. Help us spread these important messages. Please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Your support allows us to continue bringing more such impactful stories to light. Thank you for being part of our community of kindness and truth.